There was this man. He signed up to be part of this holy retreat. Kind of like a cross between a hermitage and a monastery. He spent the first 3 months sitting in complete silence. Not a word escaped his mouth. Then one day he walked into the Holy Father's office and just said 2 words. Bad food. Then went back to his silence. When he spoke to the Holy Father again 3 months later, he was just as brief. He said, hard bed. Then back to his silence. 3 months later, right on schedule, the man walked into the Holy Father's office. This time he was carrying a suitcase and wearing his hat and coat. Again he said only 2 words. He said, I quit. Then went out of the office, out of the front door, never to return. The Holy Father glanced at his secretary, then shrugged his shoulders and said, well, I could see that one coming. He has done nothing but complain since he arrived. What words do we let escape our mouths? Praise, slander, whatever they are, we will find them an accurate evaluation of the view we have of ourself. Did you know that our words pin us down, label us, tell the world what we are made of? Not only that, but our words become our actions. It's a cycle. Thoughts, words, actions. That's not the end of the tale. Where do our thoughts come from? We have to be carefully taught what to think, line upon line, word for word. Let me tell you about Junior. One day when Junior was 14, he noticed his father grinning all over. When he came home from the office, got a speeding ticket, he admitted, but I got Jake down at City Hall to take care of it. When Junior was 15, he was with his mother in the family car when she backed into a tree. The damage would, it would be a lot. We'll say that someone rammed us when we were in the parking lot downtown, the mother said. That way we can collect for the insurance. Why? Junior asked. Because that's what insurance companies are for. When Junior was 17, he listened one night to his lawyer bragging about how clever he'd been getting a client off scot-free in a court case. Even if you know they're guilty, you never want to plead them guilty because you can't make any money doing that, said the uncle. When Junior was 18, his family pulled every possible string to get him into a paying scholarship at a coveted Ivy League school. They even lied about the family income to make it seem that Junior needed financial aid. Then they hired a professional to write his entrance essay, which he memorized. When Junior was 19 and was having a bit of trouble scholastically, he bought the answers to a calculus finals. But Junior was caught and expelled. On his return home, his mother went into hysterics, weeping over the disgrace. How could you have done this to us? She sobbed. This isn't the way we raised you. Unbelievable, said the father. I just can't understand it. How did this happen to such an honest, upright family? He was carefully taught from a young age to be what he became by example, which made him think in a certain way, to perceive the world in a certain way, which reflected outward as action and reaction, like waves bouncing off a seawall. Perception is what makes this world look like a place where scarcity rules supreme, where we have to grab for what we want before it is grabbed by someone else who is quicker and more clever than us. When in the nest, the baby sparrow spends their time waiting for mother to return with a worm. It's a simple life. Then suddenly, all too quickly from the fledgling's point of view, they are pushed out of the nest and must learn to fly. As Rumi expressed this event, birds make great sky circles of their freedom. How do they do it? They fall, and while falling, they're given wings. Test number 1, passed. Then there is eating. The fledgling is getting hungry, and so they go hunting for worms. So far, so good. When they see a worm, they hop up to it with their mouth open, like when in the nest, ready to receive the worm from mommy. They expect the worm to jump into their mouth, and why not? This is how it has always happened before. Well, they figure this out eventually. Let's consider the T-Rex, which is something like a bird. The scientists are telling us that they had feathers, if I recall. The fledgling T-Rex is kicked out of the nest. They are still 10 foot tall as a fledgling. They run up to some poor caveman with their mouth open, expecting the human to jump in. The one wish of a parent above all is that their children grow up to be responsible, successful adults. It takes training, it does. It takes patience. But most of all, it takes love. When all is said and done, the final test is what the child will do when they leave home. Will they remember what they have been taught? Or did they misunderstand a crucial point, like the baby sparrow? Do our expectations exceed the limits of our reality? At ground level, I am saying that we take our fears and project them outward into all that we meet. We see them as a competitive force that we have to fight against or die in the attempt. Even life itself is seen as the enemy. This is accomplished by what is called the projection effect, like a movie projector. Our thoughts and feelings are projected outward onto this world, reflecting back an illusion of what is really there. You see enemies, or at best, competitive friends. Nothing could be further from the truth. There is this bear rambling through the forest. It comes upon a mirror nailed to a post. Grrr! Where did the bear come from? Gotta challenge it. The bear grabs the mirror and shakes it, then looks behind the mirror. His foe has magically disappeared. The bear looks at the mirror, and there he is. What's going on? He shakes the mirror again, and this time it's ripped off the post, where it lays on the ground, mirror side downward. The bear sits on the mirror in a triumphant pose of victory. But he is also confused. He gets off the mirror and lifts it off the ground a little, enough to see his own reflection as before. He jumps back, shakes his head vigorously, and runs off. What has happened? Bears often appear confused by mirrors. Why? They have never seen themselves. In the grand adventure of erasing fear from our world, where do we start? We can start by erasing our fear of self. Some say we are living in a dream world. Fear is part of the dream, not real. Fear is only the product of our perception. Imagine that in a dream you're being chased by a bear. This bear is chasing you, okay. It's kind of scary. But in another dream you're being chased by 100 bears. In which situation are you in greater danger? Because it is just a dream, there are no real bears. And so your fear is unjustified. In our world, there are a lot of dangers, but they are only bears, not real. When we let go of fear, we wake from the dream. But waking does not mean that we leave this world. Our perception of it shifts, that's all. The world of fear is dark, and the world without fear is light. We shift in and out of each other's worlds without knowing it, because in a physical sense, it is the same world. How can we enter this other world of love and peace? The one with no fear, and stay there. Go into the silence. That is the doorway. The silence is beyond another door called quieting the mind. So let's talk about how to quiet the mind as a first step to entering this other world. A quiet mind is like a clean sheet of paper, not cluttered up, and so it is easier to write on it. As long as we're fighting our reality, it will fight back and refuse to be rewritten. Let me say that again. As long as we're fighting our reality, it will fight back and refuse to be rewritten. The easiest way to quiet the mind is simply to sit still and allow your body and mind to unwind naturally. You surrender to the quiet. Let go of your need to fight the idiosyncrasies of this world and surrender to the quiet. It is true that we live in a world where everything seems to be facing an opposite force. This is an illusion. We have gladly entered, for the dynamic of this mortal life is not cause for despair, but celebration. The creative force so loves and trusts us. It gave us the power to conjure up entire worlds and explore them. Projection is one way we can do this. Another way is by extension. Extension means that we recognize godly attributes within ourselves, and we extend them to unfold the world we perceive outside of us. Extension is similar to projection, in that we are taking something inside ourselves and seeing it outside. But in extension, we are not fabricating a separation between ourselves and what we see. Instead, we enfold the world with the goodness that abides at the core of our being. Projection splits and disowns. Extension includes and embraces. Fear causes projection, and love causes extension. I have a story. I had a neighbor I regarded as a nasty alcoholic. Brenda would sit at the kitchen table with her husband and drink and complain. I did not see any good in her. Then she and her husband took a young fellow in to live with them. Mark helped the couple around the house and stayed with them for years. When Brenda passed away, Mark told me, Brenda was one of the kindest people I have ever known. She and her husband treated me like a son. I will always remember and love her. In that moment, I realized how skewed my perception of Brenda was. I was focusing on one aspect of her that brought me pain to consider. Mark, on the other hand, focused on an aspect of Brenda that brought him joy. Each of us was reaping the result of our interpretation. From that moment on, I began to think of Brenda as a kind person, which has brought me peace. Here's a letter from a woman who was paralyzed from the growth of a benign tumor on her spine to an inmate in prison whom she had befriended. This is a classic example of how we can shift from projection to extension. The lesson to be gained is that whether we project our fear or expand our love outward is entirely up to us. It is a choice. This woman chose to extend her love. Here's a letter. Dear Raymond, I want you to know that I have been thinking about you often since receiving your letter. You mentioned how difficult it is to be locked behind bars, and my heart goes out to you. But when you said that I couldn't imagine what it was like to be in prison, I felt impelled to tell you that you are mistaken. There are different kinds of freedom, Raymond. Different kinds of prison. When at the age of 31 I woke one day to find that I was completely paralyzed, I felt trapped, overwhelmed by a sense of being imprisoned in a body that would no longer allow me to run through the meadow or dance or carry my child in my arms. For a long time I lay there, struggling to come to terms with my infirmity, trying not to succumb to self-pity. I asked myself whether in fact life was worth living under such conditions, whether it might be better just to die. It seemed to me that I had lost everything in life that mattered. I was near total despair. But then one day it occurred to me that, in fact, there were still some options open to me, and that I had the freedom to choose among them. Would I smile when I saw my children again, or would I weep? Would I rail against God, or would I ask him to strengthen my faith? In other words, what would I do with the free will he had given me and which was still mine? I made a decision to strive as long as I was alive, to live fully as I could, to seek to turn my seemingly negative experiences into positive ones, to look for ways to transcend my physical limitations by expanding my mental and spiritual boundaries. I could choose to be a positive role model for my children, or I could wither and die emotionally as well as physically. There are many kinds of freedom, Raymond. When we choose one kind, when we lose one kind of freedom, we simply must look for another. You can look at your bars, or you can look through them. You can be a role model for younger inmates, or you can mix with the troublemakers. You can love God and seek to know him, or you can turn your back on him. To some extent, Raymond, we are in this thing together. Signed, Marie. Each of us has two forces at work inside us, an embryonic wisdom that wants to blossom from the depths of our being, and the imprisoning weight of our fear and regrets, whose fetters we find nearly impossible to escape, an unconditioned awake presence that wants to connect fully with life, and our conditioned personality patterns that narrow our perception and keep us half asleep. We, you and I, are all in prison together. We are all handicapped with limitations beyond our simple understanding. We can stand together by extending our love outward and thrive even here, or we can shrink into a dark corner and mourn our losses, where we project fear onto the walls of our self-made prison, blocking the view of the greater world beyond, one which is full of light and beauty and fulfillment. What am I saying? What am I saying? My hand. What does this tell you? Now, what does this tell you? One is open, the other is shut. J.R.R. Tolkien wrote in The Return to the King, "The way is shut. It was made by those who are dead, and the dead keep it. Until the time comes, the way is shut." Today is a good day to die, the warrior cries out as he charges into battle. Put down your battle axe of fearful projection and embrace this world with love and expansion. Then the way will no longer be shut. Then, like a supernova of compassion, like a tidal wave of infinite bliss, your soul will expand outward to fill the entire universe. So, be brave and let your true self come out to play in this world of fear and see what kind of paradise we can create. That is the prayer which I extend to all of you this day, with love and the hand of fellowship.